All right, thanks. Well, hello. My name is Carl Blow, and I'm a candidate for Group 4, the St. Augustine Port Waterway and Beach District. I guess what I'll do is just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 58 years old. My occupation is I manage commercial real estate, and I live in the city of St. Augustine. Education, basically I have a bachelor's of business administration with a real estate urban analysis thrust from the University of North Florida. I also have a bachelor's of science degree in building construction technology, also from the University of North Florida. My work business experience over the last 30 years, I've been in the construction and real estate development industry here in Northeast Florida. I've served as a project manager for condominium projects, apartment projects, retail buildings, industrial buildings. For the last 10 years, I've been self-employed, providing property management, brokerage, and construction consulting services to clients in Northeast Florida. I currently manage properties in Jacksonville, Atlanta, and I have a property in northern Mississippi, actually near Oxford. I'm a Florida licensed general contractor, Florida licensed real estate broker, a Florida licensed pollutant storage contractor, which basically those are the guys that put in underground fuel tanks. And why I have that license is a long story, you don't want to hear it. I also have my United States Coast Guard master's or captain's license. My license allows me to operate vessels up to 100 tons and as far offshore as 200 miles off the coast. As far as my community service activities, I represent St. Johns County on the Florida Inland Navigation District. The Florida Inland Navigation District covers 12 counties from the Georgia border on the east coast of Florida all the way to Miami-Dade. I'm the past chairman. I'm a current member of the City of St. Augustine Planning and Zoning Board. Now, basically, I've been on that board for well over 6 years. I think it's approaching 8 years maybe. But I'll be leaving that board in September because they have term limits in the city. And just as a point of interest, there's 2 vacancies coming up on that board in September if anyone's interested. One of them is me. I'm also the past vice chairman of the St. Augustine Port Waterway and Beach District. And I'm a new current member of the St. Johns County Industrial Development Authority. Family, I've been married to Lynn for 25 years. She's put up with me for that long so far. And then basically the question is, why are you running for office? I held the seat on the St. Augustine Port Waterway and Beach District from 2006 to 2010. I'm asking the voters to allow me to replace Tom Rivers, who's had to give up his seat to run for an open seat on the St. Johns County School Board. I'd like the opportunity to continue working on my goal of improving the public access to the navigable waters of St. Johns County and the Atlantic Ocean. The Intercoastal Waterway and the 2 ocean inlets, St. Augustine and Matanzas, are important public assets that are enjoyed by both the residents of St. Johns County and by the visitors who come here and support our tourist-based economy. Maintaining and improving our waterways and beaches is a top priority, not only to support the tourist-based economy, but also maintain the quality of life for the citizens of St. Johns County. I'll give you a little background. During my term on the St. Augustine Port Waterway and Beach District from 2006 to 2010, I secured grant funding and permits for the Phase 1 restoration and dredging of the Salt Run Channel, which serves the Lighthouse Park boat ramp, the Conch House Marina, the City of St. Augustine mooring field, and provides boater access to Anastasia State Park. I also secured grant funding and permits to replace the floating dock at Lighthouse Park boat ramp with a new and larger concrete floating dock. I started a program to restore the San Sebastian River channel to its original permitted depth. That channel was originally dredged in the early 50s and it really has not been dredged since then. It needs some maintenance now. I also secured grant funding to remove derelict and abandoned boats that are a safety and environmental hazard to our waterways. I helped secure funding for a new fire boat for the City of St. Augustine and for 2 new surf rescue boats for St. Johns County. I secured grant funding for the design and permitting for a public access floating dock at the Bolano Fishing Pier. And I helped manage the construction of 3 new offshore artificial reefs, the High School Reef, the Netherton Reef, and the Andy King Reef. I also secured the concrete materials from the old Summer Haven A1A bridges. This reef material is being stockpiled for future reefs. And so then, in the last 2 years, I assisted in the construction of the Grady Prather Artificial Reef, which is on the border of St. Johns County and Flagler County off of marine land. I helped secure the old US 1 bridge here in St. Augustine for reuse as a future artificial reef located, and we hope to locate that material at the Andy King Reef site, which is off the St. Augustine Inlet. I helped complete the installation of the new public floating dock at Bolano, which recently we had the ribbon cutting. I helped complete the installation of the public viewing dock at the River House facility for the Council of Aging, which I'm very excited about. I think that's a good example of how you can provide public access to the waterways and to people that don't own boats, that may not be in physical shape to use a boat any longer. In addition, I assisted St. Johns County and the City of St. Augustine in a successful effort to both renourish St. Augustine Beach and also completely dredge and restore the St. Augustine Inlet Channel. This project is currently underway. In fact, Peter Guenta had an article this morning about it. And I think Herb Rippey, who's also a commissioner on the Port District, had really made an excellent point in that article when he talked to Peter, that initially the Corps was simply going to dredge another big hole at the east end of the inlet and put that sand on the beach, but due to some negotiations, we were successful at having the Corps change their plans and take the bulk of the sand for the beach renourishment from the inlet channel. And so what as Herb will say, you get a twofer. You're renourishing the beach and you're restoring the inlet channel. And so in addition to that, I helped secure the U.S. Customs Homeland Security Small Boat Training School for St. Augustine. This is a facility that trains crews for Homeland Security to operate these high-speed pursuit vessels. And also I've been working with the Airport Authority to improve their barge loading facility at the airport. The St. Augustine Airport, which is now named the Northeast Florida Regional Airport, is probably the only airport that I'm aware of in Florida that has direct access to the Intercoastal Waterway. So it's sort of a fully integrated transportation facility, or certainly has that potential. And then the big question here is, if the voters allow me to return to the Fort Waterway Beach District, what are my goals? Well, the first one is to dredge the San Sebastian River Channel using grant funding obtained from state and federal sources. As you guys know, this channel serves the major and only really major working waterfront for St. Augustine and St. Johns County. I'd like to complete the dredging in the Salt Run Channel using funding obtained from state and federal sources. I'd like to finalize the updated St. Augustine Inlet Management Plan using new data from studies that were completed by Florida State University and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Updating the Inlet Management Plan will help St. Johns County manage beach renourishment projects in the future. Also, I'd like to build additional artificial reefs using the materials from the old A1A Summer Haven and US 1 bridges. Currently, we have approximately 15 to 20 barge loads of concrete bridge materials, which is perfect reef materials, stored at the St. Augustine Airport, who have been extremely helpful with us over the years in our artificial reef program. And my last goal, if I get elected, is to continue to make sure that tax dollars are used for projects that directly benefit the taxpayers and are not used to support a government bureaucracy. That's sort of a pet peeve with me. I think government should be efficient, and you know, I think it's up to your elected officials to you know, in some ways run government like a business, is try and make it run efficiently. And so that's my opening statement. If you guys have any questions, if you like, I can give you a real brief history of the Port District. What I run into a lot with the public is the fact that many of them in the public really don't know anything about the Port District. So what I brought today is a map. I don't know if you folks at home will be able to see this, but this is actually the Port District, which is a special taxing district. The Port District was created in 1939, and the reason it was created was the current inlet is not the natural inlet. The natural inlet that was used from by the Spanish and the English and everyone else up until 1940 actually was south of the current inlet down near the lighthouse, which is why they built the lighthouse there. But in 1940 they relocated the inlet, and in order to complete that effort, the Army Corps of Engineers has to have a local sponsor, a government sponsor, and that's why this district was created by the Florida legislature as a special taxing district. And no one really knows the logic of the boundaries here. Briefly, I don't know if you can see this at home, but the district includes the city of St. Augustine, the city of St. Augustine Beach, and then it runs north, and Volano includes Volano, and it goes all the way up to basically the Guana Dam and stops there. And then the line extends west and picks up kind of the southern half of Palencia, and it runs out here in 12 Mile Swamp, and then turns south, and it picks up the interchange of State Road 16 and I-95, and then it continues south and picks up King Street, then runs back east again, and basically cuts St. Augustine South in half. So the northern half of St. Augustine South is in the taxing district. And then of course it's got the barrier island, Crescent Beach, all the way down to the Flagler County line. And there's approximately 40,000 people that live in this taxing district. But that's the history of it. Other than that, I've got another. I know I've talked a lot about artificial reefs. I think that's a very viable activity for the Port District. The reason I get excited about artificial reefs is, one, I'm a fisherman, but also I'm really impressed with the economic impact that artificial reefs create. And I brought another graphic for you today. This was on the front page of the Florida Times-Union on March the 2nd, 2012, and they did a really good article about the economic impact of fishing in Northeast Florida. And this is one of the graphic that was on the front page. And this is from NOAA and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And what they're showing here is they've got Nassau, Duval, St. Johns, Clay, and Baker counties. And what the study determined was that in these Northeast Florida counties, the annual economic impact of fishing is $556 million. And that represents a direct, or creating 5,304 direct jobs from this fishing activity every year. And then they went on and they further split that out between freshwater fishing and saltwater fishing. And the saltwater fishing is obviously the majority of it. It's $398 million a year economic impact, and it represents 3,816 direct jobs. And if you really look at this, obviously there's not a lot of saltwater fishing in Clay and Baker counties. And then when you look at the three counties on the coast, I'd hazard to guess that a large percentage of this $398 million is spent right here in St. Johns County and right here inside the Port District. So by building these artificial reefs, I think we support this economic activity and we help it grow. And but anyway, the TU did a great job on this article back in March. But other than that, I've got to, just for the folks at home, instead of just looking at me, show you what's going on out at the St. Augustine Airport and why I got involved with the airport and helping to restore basically the barge terminal out there, or what they call the seaplane basin. This is a photograph of a couple airplanes, and these airplanes are being loaded on a barge at the airport, and they're being exported. They'll be barged up, or they were barged up to the Port of Jacksonville, loaded on a ship, and exported to, actually these planes were bought by Taiwan. And they're E-2 Hawkeyes, and they're totally encased in shrink wrap, which is kind of cool. And but there was two of them, and these two aircraft represent $160 million of export activity right out of here, right out of St. Augustine, right from north of Grumman. So this is the kind of activity, just an example of what I think a port commissioner should be involved in, and should assist your partner government entities like the Airport Authority and so forth to you know, improve the quality of life in St. Johns County. But any
Those planes were made at Northrop Grumman?
Actually, these were photographed by a commissioner with the Airport Authority.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Well, that's not what, but the planes are Northrop Grumman planes, is that correct?
Oh, yeah. These two aircraft were basically modernized.
Mm-hmm.
They were originally built by Northrop Grumman, sold to Taiwan, and they needed to be upgraded with new engines, new wings, new avionics, and so they shipped them back by ocean freight to Jacksonville, unloaded them, put them on barge, brought them down here, unloaded them at Northrop Grumman in St. Augustine, and I think they worked on them for about a year to complete that contract. And when it was completed, they put them in the shrink wrap and put them back on the barge and shipped them back to Taiwan. So, but anyway, I thought it was a neat picture, that's why I brought it.
Wow, I wish we'd gotten that story.
Yeah, so that was.
Well, I don't know if the Taiwanese were really excited about a lot of publicity on that, but at any rate,
They have it now.
it's happened, you know, over a year ago, so it's old news. But anyway,
Let me ask you a question, and my only question, and Margot knows this issue much better than I do, so I'll shut up. But you may recall, and I know you recall intimately, the charge that your challenger made in the last campaign is that by being unfined, you couldn't be in the Portsmouth waterway. There was a conflict there. You disagreed vigorously with that, but but you're running again, and so let's get your comments on it.
well, there's absolutely no basis in that. You know, that was vetted before I was appointed by the governor to the fine board.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, you know, what's interesting, when you're appointed by the governor versus running for election,
Mm-hmm.
the governor and the Florida Senate, they spend a lot of time checking you out, much more so than you're vetted when you run for public office. Actually, it's really the press's responsibility to vet people running for public office.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, to answer your question, there was no legal reason why I couldn't serve on both boards. In fact, if you look at the fine board, the mayor of Palm Coast is also the fine commissioner for Flagler County. The fine commissioner for Brevard County serves on the Brevard County Airport Authority. And if I went down the line, I think you would see other similar situations. I think Mr. Bliss was, what he verbalized was that he was concerned that due to the Sunshine Law that he would not be able to discuss fine or Florida navigation districts with me if I was on the port board. Well, I have not heard from Mr. Bliss since I haven't been on the board. It's been 2 years. I haven't had a single phone call from Mr. Bliss to discuss anything. So I don't understand what his issues were. I suspect his issues were, if you guys remember, the port was involved in developing the city's harbor maintenance plan. and the port assisted the city in permitting the mooring fields. And Mr. Bliss was never in favor of those activities. I in fact was in favor of those activities, and I worked hard with the city to get that done, because what we had out there was a situation where things were out of control. We had boats sinking, we had boats that were people living on boats that were dumping raw sewage. It was a real problem. And I think now that we're in 2012 and you look at what we have out there, we have a greatly improved harbor situation. And the feedback that the city is getting from the mooring fields is very positive. So I think, you know, like I say, Mr. Bliss has never contacted me about anything in the last 2 years. I only speculate maybe that we disagreed on whether that problem should be tackled or not, and his position was that nothing should be done, and so maybe that's why he ran against me. I don't know. You'll have to ask him.
Okay.
I think you said it, but I'll just ask it in maybe a different way. What are you think the most important projects are, the dredging and the reefs? Are there others that you think are on that high up on the list
Well,
of
I'll tell you
projects for Portland Waterway?
I'll tell you, in a global scale, you know, this is a special taxing district, and I think it's important that the port earn its keep. And the reason I say that is these 40,000 folks that live in this special taxing district pay about $400,000 a year in real estate taxes. It costs about $100,000 a year to operate the port, to be in business, to operate that entity. It costs $100,000 a year, and where that money is spent is on attorney's fees, your annual audit that's required, you know, the necessary staff that we have to do, the record keeping, that sort of thing, the insurance that we have to carry. So I think it's important that the Port District is engaged in solving the problems out there in the marine environment and basically improving the public's access to the waterways. Because I can tell you that what has happened here in the last year is, now that Governor Scott's in office, he's done something I think is I don't know how y'all feel about the Governor Scott, but I think this is a really good thing. He has sent out a memo basically that what they're going to do. There's something like 1,600 plus special taxing districts in the state of Florida, similar to this one. And these special taxing districts were created for all kinds of things. Building hospitals, public hospitals, mosquito control, port activities, stuff like that. But there's over 1,600 of them. And what the governor plans to do is, and this has already started, is to basically audit these 16. I mean, they're all audited every year by statute, but he is putting together a task force to go and look at these 1,600 special taxing districts to see whether or not they're still needed, because this district, as well as the rest of them, are all created by the Florida legislature for a specific purpose. And I think that the reason I want to get back on the Port District is I want to make sure. I think the Port District serves a purpose here in St. Augustine as long as we're engaged and we're out there making it a better place to live. But if we're not engaged in doing that, if we just meet once a month and never do anything, then there's really no need for a Port District. And my concern is if we're not out there, building reefs, improving boat ramps, dredging channels, picking up derelict boats where they occur, then the governor might recommend to the legislature that we're not needed any longer. And I think that would be a sad thing for the area, because I do think that if we're as commissioners on the Port District, if we're engaged out there improving the place, then they'll keep us around. But in a nutshell, that's kind of is what really is driving my interest in getting back on the board. Because I will guarantee you, at some point, that task force will come and visit the Port District, and they're going and they're just like auditors. They're going to want to know whether or not we're producing anything for the cost to the taxpayer. And I think that's, I think that's a great idea. I think the governor is right on track to do that. And I think it's up to us, if I get back on the port board, to earn our keep, to demonstrate to the governor and demonstrate primarily to the taxpayers that we're worth having around.
Okay.
Carl, what's the levy now? I looked it up and didn't write it down, the levy.
I didn't write it down either, Margaret.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I know it's,
Scratch that.
I like
But
to
it's
use
like-
those round numbers. It's about, 400.
400,000 a year that comes in.
And
Okay.
I will tell you this, we haven't increased, or the Port District has not increased their millage in quite a long time.
And that money goes into these projects and it's amplified by grants,
Well,
right?
yeah, and
Of course.
basically up until now, and I think most of the commissioners share this view, we thought it was important for the port to have a reserve account, which is, it has currently roughly $2 million in reserves. It was important to maintain those funds in case something happened in the inlet channel that we needed to get out there and hire a dredging contractor and get it back open. Or some major large vessel sinks in the channel and there's no one there to remove the vessel. So that's why they've held those reserves. As you know, or as we speak, there's $12 million being spent to re-nourish the beach and dredge the channel. So going forward, the argument that we need to keep this reserve is somewhat weakened, say, because we're going to get a brand new inlet channel, nice and straight, right back to its original design of 16 feet deep. And I'm optimistic that that channel won't need any dredging for at least another 10 years, maybe 15. It's hard to predict how long, because the inlet's so dynamic. It's very hard to predict what will happen out there if a shoal forms in one spot or another. But from past history, there hasn't been any major dredging in this inlet until now, and the last time there was any dredging done was of any significance was, I think, in 1998. And so anyway, going forward, I think we need to really be active at justifying, if I get back on the port board, of justifying our existence. And I think one way to do that is to get out here and build these reefs, or at least help build these reefs. Obviously, a lot of the reefs that I've spoken of, approximately 60% of the funding came from grants from the Fish and Wildlife, or the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, which is basically getting their funding from excise taxes, federal excise taxes on fishing tackle. But they have a grant program, and what's important, like most grant programs, is to have that local match so that you can apply for the grants. And a lot of these reefs, the port stepped up and provided the local match so that the grants could be applied for. Just like in the case of the Florida Inland Navigation District, the port has stepped in and provided the local match so that, say, St. Johns County could apply for a grant for the new Volano floating dock, or the city of St. Augustine could apply for a grant to dredge the San Sebastian River. Because, as you guys know, both, particularly the county, is been really constrained financially due to the recession we've had for the last 5 years or however long, and they simply don't have the money that they used to have to use as local matches, and that's where the port's been very helpful being able to step in and provide the seed money or the local match money, so that in the case of St. Johns County, you know, Will Smith, the Director of Parks and Recreation, you know, if you can provide him the local matching funds, then he's in a position to make a grant application on behalf of St. Johns County. For in this case, there's one he made, well, actually he's using county money for that, but anyway, it's very important that the Port District is engaged with both the county and the city, and to you know, go after these grants that are out there. Because if you don't ask for them, you're not going to get them.
Definitely not.
And it does require some local match. And the thing is with the port, what you're doing is you're leveraging this local tax revenue in order to get money from these state agencies. And the thing to remember is that like in the case of the Florida Inland Navigation District, the Florida Inland Navigation District has a grant program for local governments, and it's allocated to each county based on the amount of tax generated by that county. And in the case of St. Johns County, every year there's an allocation of roughly, I think it's $457,000 this year for grant projects in St. Johns County. I may be wrong on that number, but it's close to that.
But that comes from fine.
That comes from fine, but it's tax dollars paid by St. Johns County residents to fine.
And then where does the port get involved with that money?
Well, most of the fine grant projects are 50% grants. So in order to go after that $457,000 that's allocated to St. Johns County, you have to come up with the local match. Now we have a couple of programs, like for instance dredging the Salt Run Channel because of the public boat ramp. That's actually a 75% grant from fine, so you only have to put up 25%. But what's important? But if there's nobody there to put up the local match, you don't get the money, and it doesn't accrue. It's just it just goes back in the pot. So I think that's a role that you know, since I got involved with the port, that I've really pushed is to help you know, our partner governments be in a position to go for this grant funding, because at the end of the day, this money is money that's been paid by people that live here, and all we're doing is making sure they're getting their money back.
How far out do you go on the reefs, the ones that you've helped construct? How far?
Well, I got a graphic on that, but
I bet you do.
actually the main activity as far as reef activity, the port's been involved with not only St. Johns County but also Flagler County in reef building. And the reason for that is Flagler County has a very active reef program, and they have a site permitted about 12 nautical miles due east of the county line. It's 1 square mile, and we that's where the Netherton Reef is located, the Grady Prather Reef, the Halusky Reefs, and the thinking there is, you know, Flagler County doesn't have an inlet, so the people that are out fishing, I mean, there are few people who will exit Matanzas, and that's in St. Johns County, but the bulk of the people fishing those reefs down there are coming out of St. Augustine. In fact, I've been down on those reefs and had the Sea Love pull up, which is based here. It's a charter boat based here in St. Augustine. So that's why the port got involved with Flagler County on their reef program. As far as St. Johns County, we basically have 2 active permitted sites in St. Johns County. I will tell you that all these offshore artificial reefs are permitted and regulated by the Army Corps of Engineers. And currently we have 2 active permitted sites. One of them is the High School Reef, which is about 13.5 miles northeast of the inlet. And the other one is the Andy King Reef, which is only about 8 miles off this kind of east-southeast of the St. Augustine Inlet. In fact, when you're on the Andy King Reef, you can see the buildings, you can see you know, you can see land, and that's a 40-acre site. And we basically working with Will Smith and I, and working with the Ancient City Game Fish Association, who also put money in that drop. We actually did that in 2010. And we put 2 barge loads of bridge piling out there. And it's been a very successful reef, very popular. But what my big goal is to get more material out there, because we have a 40-acre site. We've secured 15 to 20 barge loads of perfect reef material that the airport's storing for us. So the idea is to leverage our funding in order to get more material out there. And actually, Will Smith and I have been talking to the folks at the TDC about budgeting some money in this year's budget for further reef construction at Andy King. And also the other thing we've been doing is the city of Jacksonville has a permitted site that's basically due east of Micros Road or Micros Landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've done 2 deployments there. And but the city of Jacksonville, unfortunately for them, they don't have an Ed Woolner at the St. Augustine Airport who's willing to work with them and store reef materials. It's hard for me to believe, but there's nowhere in Jacksonville that they can stockpile reef materials that, you know, close to the water that can be loaded onto a barge. And so the city of Jacksonville, they have a problem getting reef material. So what we're doing is we've told the city that we'll provide some reef material, because we've got 15 to 20 barge loads for reef that's placed due east of Micros Road, which, as you guys know, is off of St. Johns County. In fact, the reef location is equal distance from the St. Johns River and the St. Augustine Inlet. It's about, I think it's about 15, 16 miles either way. So that's what we're doing on reefs. Anyway,
So when you say 15 to 20 barge loads, I guess the barge is big. I don't know what that
15
means.
to 20,000 tons of concrete. And all you got to do is envision what this 15 to 20 barge loads is. If you remember driving down A1A, and as you're approaching Marine Land, there's the main bridge over in Matanzas Inlet.
Yep.
And then south of that bridge, there were 2 other bridges, which basically went over the Summer Haven River.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, DOT replaced those 2 bridges. And dumb luck has it, the contractor that had the job was a friend of mine. And we were talking, and he said, hey, yeah, you need to call this guy because they don't have any place to take the concrete. And so I contacted them, and sure enough, they had gotten the contract, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do with the old bridges, because those 2 bridges were totally removed.
Right.
And so, long story short, it ends up going, they hauled it to a location on property owned by the airport authority that's on Big Oak Road down next to
Yeah,
VJ.
and that's
VJ, you've
right.
seen his racetrack.
Where the
down-
warehouses were going to eventually be.
Right. But if you want to go see it, go down the end of Big Oak Road there where VJ has his racetrack, and it's all piled up on next to the racetrack.
Big artificial mountain.
Yeah. So anyway, to envision the size of it, you got those 2 bridges, and then over here at US 1, Will Smith and I got to know the DOT folks pretty well when we were working the Bridge Alliance project. And so when the US 1 project came up, the replacement of the US 1 bridge there at King Street, Brody's, and there, they said, hey, you know, this is a design build project. In other words, it was fast track. And they said, if you move now, you can probably get it written in the job specifications and the contract that the old bridge has to be used for an artificial reef. So we met with the DOT and with the contractor, and they said, yeah, we'll do that. And so basically the bridge that's currently under construction, part of it's already been hauled out to our storage facility. And then as they finish that first phase of it and start on the second phase, which is really about 2/3 of the bridge, all that gets hauled out to our storage facility. So to give you a concept of size, I mean, you've got 3 bridges, those are big bridges.
Yeah.
So in the case of Andy King, we've got a 40-acre site. The 2 barge loads that we put out there probably take up 5% of that. So we could build a really nice
That'd be a
reef
lot.
with what we've got out there. The key though is it's expensive to get the material offshore. And realistically, I mean, I mean, I'm a business person, you know, unfortunately I have to be realistic in my business. I don't know, I mean, what I'm about to say is I can't see us securing enough funding to take all that material and put it at Andy King. That's why we work with Flagler County, we work with Jacksonville. I mean, I'd be a very happy camper if we got another 10 barge loads out at Andy King. But the key is to keep the momentum going. I think it would be a mistake to, well, be greedy and not work with Duval County, not work with Flagler County, because at the end of the day, those reefs benefit everybody.
I had, oh, did you, okay.
Joe?
You mentioned the Bridge of Lions. Do you all keep up with the traffic? I mean, is there a lot more commercial traffic on the waterway now because the bridge has improved, or?
Well, the bridge, actually,
You know, I don't see many barges tying up at
Yeah.
those dolphins
at the
anymore.
Dolphins, yeah, the amount of commercial traffic on the intercoastal waterway is pretty flat. It hasn't increased. The bridge, as you guys probably know, is from its the horizontal clearance of that
Right.
bridge, I think is 75 feet.
Yeah,
It's the narrowest bridge on the intercoastal waterway, I think,
so that,
between
and
here
we
and
know that
Virginia.
didn't change.
Yeah, that didn't change. So, the bridge has had really no impact on the commercial traffic that I know of on the intercoastal. I guess you could argue, well, if it had a wider horizontal
It may
width,
have,
maybe
yeah.
we would get more traffic, but I don't think that's the case.
Okay, so it's kind of flatter there. What about all these marinas? Are you all involved with the marinas like Comanche and St. Augustine and
Well, as far as
Sebastian?
what we have in St. Augustine, you have the city marina, which is owned by
Right.
the city. The rest of the marinas are owned by, private individuals, or they're private marinas, for profit marinas. I think the purpose of the Port District, and fine for that matter, is to maintain the infrastructure, so that which helps keep those marinas in business. It's really no different than maintaining 207 out here.
The roads?
Yeah, in other words, you built this facility here, and you're in business, you need a road, and that's what we do. I mean, we provide make sure that the channels are viable, so these guys can stay in business and serve the public.
So, the port, when you think of a port, you think of someplace with a harbor master and, moving traffic, moving boats around and things like that. But it's always struck me that this port is so active, but yet it's almost invisible to, I guess, maybe we take things for granted because it's happening, reefs are happening, but I don't think the connection
Well, I
is
think
really
that-
there with the
yeah.
public.
The big difference, I think, between this little port district and, say, Jacksport, or what they call Deepwater Port,
Right,
is we don't own it. This port district doesn't own any upland real estate. The only real estate holdings, they own some marshland over there adjacent to the Milano boat ramp, but it's jurisdictional land. You can't fill it. I mean,
Right.
it's saltwater marsh. So, I guess back in 1939 when they created the port district, I mean, when you look at the charter, it actually has the power of condemnation, and it can own warehouses and do all kinds of stuff. But for whatever reason, it never acquired any, upland facilities. It never acquired a marina or a boatyard or anything like that. And so it's really its primary purpose is to serve as a local sponsor with the Army Corps of Engineers to maintain the inlet.
and to get these monies that become available, like the state money and other grant money, right?
Well, that's actually, I'm kind of the guy that's been pushing. I started pushing that in 2006 because we needed some stuff done and it wasn't getting done. And then I became aware of this grant funding and the fact that other, like for instance, Jacksonville is very aggressive at obtaining grants for fine. And everybody was there obtaining grants except for
St. Jeffrey.
us. And so, you know, but we've turned that around. We've always, my goal as a fine commissioner is to make, and I work on this. I mean, our grant review period is in May, and the grants have to be submitted by April 1st. Well, I start immediately after the end of the deadline on what are we going to do next year. You know, what needs to be done, and how are we going to pay for it, and where are we going to get the local match. So I push the county and the city to basically do what's necessary in order to apply for a grant in the next cycle. No, we don't wait around a week before the grant deadline and say, well, geez, what are we going to do? You can't do that. You've got, the major thing you've got to do is secure the local matching funds. But we've got ongoing projects here. As I say, the next big ongoing project that we're starting is the San Sebastian River. We've been working on Salt Run. We've made a lot of progress over there, but the direction is more towards the San Sebastian. To give you an idea, that to restore that river to its original design depth of the channel, we'll have to dredge about 40,000 cubic yards of material. And we can't really do that at one time. There's not enough funding available to do that. So it's a multi-year effort. To give you an example, the city of St. Augustine applied for a fine grant this cycle. It's currently being reviewed, and the idea was to dredge about 12,000 cubic yards based on what we think it will cost based on what we've paid in the past. Going forward, hopefully you'll see activity to get the San Sebastian River back to its original design over the next 3 or 4 years. And then other than that, we've got a situation on the county side. If you go to the Milano boat ramp, there's an issue there with a sandbar that forms where the channel exits the basin, and the county has a grant application in to do some dredging in there. But long term, we need to see if we can figure out a way to improve the design of that entrance channel so it doesn't require as much dredging, periodic dredging. So I can assure you there's needs out there. The other need is one thing that we've seen from the successful St. Augustine or City of St. Augustine Harbor Management Plan and mooring field and anchoring ordinance is we're seeing a lot of boats moving into the county waters, particularly south of the 312 Bridge. And the county is, in fact, they want to start talking about what we're going to do about that to improve that situation, because apparently there's been some complaints down there about it.
I think there's a lot of complaints.
Yeah, and that's something that I think the port it's in the port district, and I think the port probably has a responsibility to see if they can assist in that, solving whatever problems there are down there.
What about Summer Haven? I know that comes up all the time.
Well, the port, as far as the Summer Haven River restoration,
It's a big sandbar.
yeah, that activity has been ongoing for the last 2 years in the port. Well, the Summer Haven folks came to the port and asked for assistance. They are in the district, they pay taxes to the district, so it was reasonable that they would go to the port to ask for help. And the port responded. The port has provided some funding to help them pursue permitting the restoration of the Summer Haven River. Where we go from there is, well, first thing, you gotta get the permits, and the permits are issued by by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And the preliminary estimates to restore the river completely, I think, is you'd have to move about 200,000 cubic yards, plus or minus, of material. And the idea would be, since it came from the beach, that you move it right back onto the beach, because I think it's beach quality material. The DEP is very particular about the quality of the sand that you put on a beach. And so it's my understanding right now that the port's engineer is working with DEP, and the first issue is whether you can move that sand from the river basin back onto the beach. I suspect that you probably can, but here again, the ports help fund the testing of that material, or they funded the testing of that material, and DEP's reviewing it now.
So it's a long process.
It's a long process, and I've had a lot of conversations with the Summer Haven folks, and what I've always told them, I said that this project is going to be similar to a project down in Volusia County called Rose, I think it was Rose Bay, and it was a project where they restored this tributary, I think it was an Edgewater, that flowed into the Intercoastal Waterway, and what had happened is it had filled in with a lot of silt, and they wanted to restore it because apparently at one time it was a really beautiful place, high water quality, so forth. But in order to do it, they I think it took them 15 years, but they finally secured, with the help of Representative Micah, funding from the Water Management District, the Corps. I think they got some money from DEP. I think they kicked in some of their local money. And so anyway, what I think the Summer Haven River, I mean, I'd like to see the Summer Haven River restored, but it isn't going to be easy, and it's going to cost some significant dollars, and it's going to take a lot of effort to, one, get the permits, and then two, really the big effort would be to secure the funding for it. One thing about the Summer Haven River, I know Margo knows this, but that's the original Intercoastal Waterway, so it had a lot of historic value. I mean, you had the Mellons
Yeah,
built all their vacation spots down there, and there's
and all his friends,
yeah,
the DuPont.
yeah,
I
there's
just
a
love
lot,
when
lot,
Whitney's.
lot of history.
When I
down
first
there.
moved here, it was beautiful, and now it's a desert.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of
Surprised
history
how-
there.
It really filled in quickly, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, you have anything?
Well, thanks, Carl.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
so
the
much. You
opportunity.
you get a closing statement if you want it. And I
Well,
tell everybody in this group, that's pretty tough to get the last word.
yeah. Well, anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys today, and you know, for you folks at home, I appreciate your vote.
Cool deal. Thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
Thanks.